Before diving into this incredible story, remember to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here, every story has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. The morning sun reflected off the glass facades of the global tech skyscraper, casting glimmers of light into the perfectly ordered offices. In one of them, James Whitman, the arrogant and notoriously racist CEO, sat enthroned behind his enormous desk, nervously tapping his fingers on the dark leather. Every morning, he liked to remind his employees that he was above them, and today he had decided to demonstrate his authority to his new recruit, Tanya Morgan. Tanya, a sleek and confident young black woman, walked down the gleaming parquet-floored hallway, her tailored suit perfectly fitted. Her heels clicked loudly in the quiet space. She knew this interview wouldn't be ordinary. Rumors about Whitman circulated in the offices, some feared him, others avoided him. But Tanya wasn't afraid of him, nor of the hatred subtly concealed behind false smiles. Upon entering the office, she met Whitman's cold, contemptuous gaze. Without preamble, he rose from his seat, his icy voice echoing in the room. "Dirty black woman, obey me." The word struck like a whip. Most employees would have looked down, but Tanya remained motionless, her back straight, her hands clasped in front of her. She felt anger rising, but calmed it, knowing that panic or immediate revolt was not an option. Whitman thought he was in complete control, unaware that he had just ignited a spark he could never extinguish. Tanya observed her surroundings, the executives trying to hide their discomfort, the distant hum of printers, the steady ticking of the clock. Everything was silent, yet charged with tension. Every movement, every breath seemed amplified. She knew this moment would determine the balance of power in this office, and she was ready to change it. Whitman, for his part, believed that his new employee's skin color justified his contempt and authority. He was completely unaware of who stood before him. Tanya Morgan was not just an employee, she was the daughter of Malcolm Morgan, an influential and respected investor in the company, keeper of secrets Whitman should never have been unaware of. And what Whitman considered a simple game of domination would soon turn against him, with a precision and coldness that Tanya had honed throughout her life. Whitman, still red with anger, stood up from his seat, slamming the back of his chair back authoritatively. His shoes echoed on the parquet floor like hammer blows. He pointed at Tanya and said in a sharp voice, "You will follow my orders to the letter, understand?" Tanya inclined her head slightly, a polite smile on her lips, but her eyes shone with icy determination. "Of course, Mr. Whitman." Convinced of his superiority, Whitman began assigning her absurd and humiliating tasks. He wanted to ridicule her in front of the other employees, filing 10-year-old documents, cleaning imaginary stains on the floor, repeating forms that had already been filled out. Each task was a test of submission. Yet, Tanya carried out each order calmly and perfectly. Her demeanor betrayed no frustration, no trembling. The employees observing the scene were first surprised, then intrigued. Some tried to support Whitman with glances, but they already sensed that the power he thought he possessed was slipping through his fingers. Whitman, furious at not seeing the fear he expected, raised his voice. "I've been talking to you. Show me you know who's boss here." Tanya placed her pen on the desk, looked up at him, and replied with unwavering calm. "I do what you ask, but that doesn't mean I respect you." The room fell silent. The clatter of keyboards and the hum of printers seemed to disappear under the mounting tension. Whitman felt his authority waver. Never before had an employee dared to speak to him like that. Frustration rose within him, but he didn't know how to retaliate without losing even more control in front of his colleagues. Tanya, for her part, remained focused, observing Whitman's every move. She knew this wasn't the time to act directly. The humiliation imposed by the headmaster was a trap, but she had a plan. Every task completed, every politely spoken word, was a chess piece precisely placed. Whitman thought he was crushing her, but he was the one slowly moving toward his own downfall. The morning wore on, and Whitman, growing increasingly irritated, assigned Tanya ridiculous tasks. Each time he thought he had humiliated her, she carried them out with disconcerting calm and efficiency. Her precise movements, impeccable notes, and polite but firm manner of responding were beginning to attract the attention of the other employees. Some exchanged incredulous glances. They had never seen a manager lose his temper like that with an employee. Tanya, however, harbored a secret Whitman was completely unaware of. Her phone, tucked discreetly into her purse, vibrated. An urgent message from her lawyer reminded her of a crucial truth: she was no ordinary employee. Tanya Morgan was the daughter of Malcolm Morgan, one of Global Tech's major investors and influential figures. Her role in the company extended far beyond simply hiring her. A single order from Whitman, based on his racial misunderstanding, could backfire catastrophically. When she took out her phone, Whitman noticed the movement but ignored it, sure it was insignificant. He didn't know he had just walked right into Tanya's trap. A few minutes later, he entrusted her with the last task of the morning, organizing confidential files for a crucial meeting. Tanya took the files, made a few checks, and when she placed them back on the desk, she declared in a clear and firm voice, "Mr. Whitman, before we continue, I believe it is necessary for you to know my true identity." Whitman burst into nervous laughter. "Your identity? I don't care who you are, as long as you obey." Tanya then opened her bag and took out a sealed official document, Malcolm Morgan's contract. She placed it on the desk, her eyes fixed on Whitman. "This is my father's contract, he's one of Global Tech's main investors. Your orders and humiliations are not only unacceptable, they are illegal if you persist." Whitman's laughter died in his throat. His gaze shifted from contempt to panic. The employees, until then silent, watched the scene with feverish attention. The words, "Malcolm Morgan's daughter," echoed through the room like a thunderclap. Tanya continued calmly. "You thought my skin color defined my worth. You tried to humiliate me in front of my colleagues. But you didn't know who I was. Now you'll have to face the consequences of your actions." Whitman felt his power fade before his eyes. Every gesture, every word he had spoken, returned to him like an implacable boomerang. And that was just the beginning. The real turnaround was coming soon. Whitman stepped back slightly, his pale face betraying panic. He fumbled to regain control, but every word he uttered now seemed clumsy and pointless. "See, it's a misunderstanding. I just wanted to." Tanya calmly interrupted him, her piercing black eyes fixing on his. "No, James. There's no misunderstanding. You tried to humiliate me, thinking that my color and my status as an ordinary employee gave you the right to belittle me. You were wrong about everything." She turned to the employees in the room, some of whom were holding their breath, and pulled out her phone. With a fluid motion, she played a confidential recording, Whitman's humiliating orders, his racist insults, and his blatant arrogance. The office was filled with the director's own voice, repeating his humiliating and contemptuous words. The shocked employees now looked at Whitman with a mixture of surprise and suppressed anger. The mocking laughter he had hoped to elicit had turned into heavy silence. Every word spoken on the recording was a blow to his authority. Whitman tried to reply, his hands trembling and his voice weaker than he would have liked. "It's not, you're exaggerating." May's Tanya, unperturbed, continues. "I'm not exaggerating. Everything is recorded and documented. You chose to humiliate and insult without reason, and now your actions are catching up with you." The executives present began to whisper amongst themselves, some discreetly taking out their phones to capture the scene. The office's glass doors, which once reflected the morning light, now seemed to reflect Whitman's impending downfall. Tanya placed the phone on the desk and crossed her arms, her gaze defiant. "You thought you were the master here, but you forgot a crucial rule: true authority is not measured by skin color or official title. It is measured by courage and integrity. And you are completely devoid of both." Whitman, overwhelmed by public humiliation, slumped into his armchair, unable to utter another word. His cheeks were red, his heart was pounding, and he finally understood the extent of his own arrogance. Tanya, with sovereign calm, left the meeting room to return to her office, leaving behind a defeated director and a lesson in dignity etched in the minds of all witnesses. A few days after the public humiliation, the atmosphere at Global Tech had changed dramatically. Employees spoke in hushed tones but with a newfound respect for Tanya. Whitman, meanwhile, remained locked in his office, vainly trying to regain the authority that had slipped from his grasp. Investors, informed of the situation by Tanya and her father, launched an internal investigation into his racist and abusive behavior. Tanya, for her part, continued her work with the same precision and composure as usual. She hadn't needed to shout or threaten, her intelligence and dignity had been enough to turn the situation around. Every email she sent, every meeting she led, reminded the employees that she was not only competent, but also invincible in the face of injustice. One morning, Whitman was summoned by the board of directors. The doors to the boardroom were closed, and this time, he wasn't in control. He had to answer for his humiliating behavior, his discrimination, and his mismanagement of the company. His arrogance had been replaced by shame and fear. When Tanya entered the room, all eyes turned to her. Whitman looked down. The murmurs from the employees echoed his past failures. The board, impressed by how Tanya had handled the situation, congratulated her and publicly acknowledged her courage and competence. A few weeks later, Whitman was suspended and replaced by a more respectful and competent manager. The employees, who had previously feared his tyranny, found themselves back in a healthy work environment. As for Tanya, she not only earned everyone's respect but also a reputation as a woman who stood up against injustice. She had transformed humiliation into triumph, fear into respect. As he left the office for the last time that day, Whitman met Tanya's gaze. She offered him a slight smile, polite but icy, as if to seal the lesson he had just learned: true authority lies not in fear or power, but in dignity, courage, and integrity. Whitman then understood that his fall was not temporary. The lesson he had learned that day would remain etched in his memory, and in the memories of all those who had witnessed Tanya Morgan's humiliation and revenge.